The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Right. Welcome, everyone, to today's Title Topics webinar, Alta's free presentations we offer every month on issues important to title professionals. I am Jeremy Yowie, Alta's Vice President of Communications. And today we've got a great webinar lined up to discuss how you can deliver for your customers. Our speakers are going to provide some great conversation on what drives your customers' decision making and things you can do to elevate their experience at the closing. Before starting, I just need to touch on a few housekeeping items. A copy of today's presentation was emailed earlier today to all registrants. You can also download a PDF from the handout section. All participant lines are muted for today's presentation. If you have any questions during the webinar, please submit them through the questions box, and our speakers will hopefully address them. As an added benefit, today's presentation is being recorded. After it's processed, the recording will be available on Alta's website at alta.org/title topics. That's alta.org/title topics. You'll also get an email with a link to access the recording directly. I do need to thank Fidelity National Title Group for sponsoring our Title Topics webinars this year. Their support allows us to continue providing these educational opportunities free of charge. With that out of the way, I'll briefly introduce today's speakers. Joining us today is Nate Baker. Nate is CEO of Qualia, the title and escrow platform he co-founded to make real estate closings a click-through experience. And since founding Qualia in 2015, they've raised more than $40 million in venture funding from several top-tier investors. Approximately 10% of all real estate transactions nationwide are closing on Qualia through their more than 1,000 title companies using the platform. Also joining us today is Ben Rubenstein. Ben is founder and CEO of OpCity. Ben launched OpCity in 2015 to improve the end-to-end home buying experience. Since then, the company has facilitated more than $4.1 billion in home transactions through its network of 60,000 plus real estate professionals. And after 2.5 years, OpCity was acquired for $210 million by News Corp, which is the operator of Realtor.com. And more than 700 title companies use OpCity to connect and meet with agents, loan officers, and consumers in their area. So as you can see, we've got two exceptional speakers who really understand what it takes and what it means to connect and deliver for your customers, and are going to offer some great tips on how to hopefully grow your business. So with that, I'll turn the presentation over to Nate.
Thank you very much, Jeremy. Today we're going to structure the conversation in two parts. The first, we're going to talk about how do you grow your revenue side. The second part, we're going to talk about how do you optimize expenses. So the first thing that I want to talk about is how do you grow the purchase business that you currently do. I think there's no one better than Ben to talk about this. So Ben, can you give us a little bit of background about what is OpCity? How do you work with realtors?
Definitely, and thanks for having me on, guys. Sorry, I'm a little sick today. If you can't understand me, let me know. So OpCity fundamentally changes the kind of lead working experience for an agent and a consumer. So historically, agents would buy leads from, say, places like Realtor.com and Zillow and others. And some of these leads they'd follow up with, some of these leads they wouldn't follow up with. And ultimately, it was a fairly painful experience for both sides. As a consumer, maybe I would be interested in a property and nobody would call me, or the wrong agent would call me. And as an agent, I'd spend a lot of money on it, advertising up front, and didn't necessarily get an ROI from it. So what we do at OpCity is we take on all of the risk, and we acquire leads from hundreds of different sources ourselves up front. We've recently been acquired, as you guys said, by Realtor.com, and so now we work a tremendous amount of Realtor.com leads as well. Those leads come directly into our team, our CRM, our proprietary system that we built. Our average time to contact those leads is 4 seconds. We get a hold of that consumer very, very quickly. 94% of our leads are contacted in less than 90 seconds. And we have a great call with them to understand their needs, really building out a buyer or seller profile for that person. In parallel to that, our matching algorithm, and this is the core of what our business is, scores our tens of thousands of agents who are on our platform based on who would have the highest probability of helping this consumer out. Historically, where they've closed homes, the neighborhoods, the price points, do they work better with first-time home buyers or empty nesters, people who are from out of town, in town? And historically, when we've passed them similar type of referrals, what have they done with them? Have they brought them to close, or have they not done anything with them?
So Ben, I have a quick question for you. I think a lot of people are familiar with the concept of realtors purchasing leads. How have you worked with title companies in the past? I think that's probably a new concept for a lot of people.
Oh, it's incredibly new. And, traditionally title companies, they come at the end of the game, right? The end of the story. They're involved right when maybe a consumer has picked out a property and they're working with the agent and then get involved then. We've said, well, let's get involved, the title organization, much sooner. So we see ourselves at OpCity as the concierge for the consumer, helping them through the home buying journey. And we are kind of one of the largest supporters of title companies, helping them get new business that you've never heard of, because we do a lot of that behind the scenes. And so we have this consumer on the line, and as I was saying, in real time, we're connecting them with an agent. And we do that through a process where we're matching those agents, and then with one button, we send push notifications to each of them to see who's available in real time. The first one to accept, we tell the consumer, hold on 1 second, call up the agent, explain the situation, and then bridge the call and introduce the two parties. But at that point in time, we are, as the fiduciary responsibility for this consumer, connecting them with a bunch of other vendors. And so right when we connect them with the consumer, we're also building out a team. We would connect them to a lender, we connect them to a title company. Soon we're going to be connecting them to homeowners insurance and everybody else. So you as the title organization get to meet the consumer at the same moment that the consumer meets the agent, and be involved in that process much sooner. So what's really
very unique.
It is, yes. Usually all of the marketing for title is pretty much to agents only, right? It doesn't really bring the consumer up, and is later down in the funnel, right? And is different ways to potentially meet agents. What's been, made title companies love our product so much is we do both. We both connect them to a consumer early on, where they can connect with that consumer, understand what that consumer's needs and desires are, and really deliver phenomenal service to that consumer early on, but also connect them to the agent. And we don't work with just any random agents, right? Our whole business, we only get paid as OpCity when a real estate transaction closes. And so we can't work with just some random Joe Schmo agent who doesn't do a lot of transactions, right? We work with agents who we know can close and close well. And when we build this team of the consumer, the agent, and the title company, we're introducing the title organization to not only the consumer who they can help on this one transaction, but that agent who they can work with for many transactions. Now, when you connect somebody so high up in the funnel, oftentimes that deal doesn't close. But that's okay because you've just, had a forced introduction in a way to an agent who is a top performer to show your value. And when the deal does close, you're there from the very beginning, showing that agent your value, and thus can get and work with them for future transactions. And our platform is all designed around, as the owner of a title organization, how you can track the work that your title agents are doing, communicating with both consumers and agents.
That makes a lot of sense, Ben. I want to jump in here now and talk a little bit about what we're doing at Qualia. This is to remind everyone that we're talking about, how do you grow the revenue side of your business? So one obvious way is, what Ben is doing, talking with new realtors. The second thing that we care a lot about is actually giving a super premium closing experience. So most consumers, especially younger first-time home buyers, are used to buying things online, used to Amazon, used to a very easy checkout experience. And so one of the main focuses that we have at Qualia is delivering that premium closing experience that a consumer might find on Amazon through your title company. And my view is that that's actually very important in securing repeat business from realtors. So as an example, let's say you're working with Ben and you have an opportunity to work with a realtor one time, or maybe you have a listing agent that's on a transaction that wasn't the source of business. How do you impress them? How do you retain them? How do you make them a frequent partner? My view is that that comes from having a premium closing experience and very, very sophisticated tools that let them do their job well. An example of that is e-signing. We have a product where realtors, consumers, can sign documents ahead of the transaction, on their phone, on the go, and really elevate that closing experience. So I would say, in summary, on the revenue side, there are two approaches. One is getting in touch with new realtors, taking new types of sales strategies. I think one of the most successful of which is purchasing leads. And then on the experience side, providing a differentiated product. So now I want to take a look at what does the cost side of the business look like. Ben, I think it'd be interesting to hear from you about how do you think title companies are spending their marketing and sales dollars now, and how do you improve or change that?
Yeah, I think a lot of traditional marketing and title is spent around, you could say, whining and dining agents. Maybe doing a training in their office, bringing in lunch, just putting yourself in front of the agent as much as possible and making them like you. And I think there are other ways that you could track your ROI a little stronger and have more bang for your buck in the dollars that you spend. In OpCity, you're not only meeting agents, you're meeting consumers, and you're much earlier on in that funnel, so you're less dependent on the agent. I think a lot of title has been very, very dependent on where the agent brings their consumer, and when you have more of a consumer relationship, you're in the driver's seat a little bit more, and you're less, again, dependent on that agent. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't continue to market to agents, but it's best to spend money on agents who actually do transactions, or spend money to agents while they're in the process of a transaction to make sure you're a part of that transaction and future transactions. Yep.
I think a lot of title companies are not necessarily set up in the same way that maybe a brokerage is, where they're used to high volume leads, a lot of potential deals that don't necessarily close. Have you seen companies changing how the organization is structured or to deal with that, or how did your customers approach that?
No, that's a great question, and you're exactly right? Typically, they're maybe outside salespeople who go meet with agents, and they don't have a gigantic prospecting list. It's more the same people and building relationships with either the brokerage or at the agent level, where what we're doing is generating a volume of real-time connections between a consumer, agent, and the title company. We find the best organizations have a few people who are maybe inside on the phone setting up appointments, who see, in real time, a lead just came through. We know this consumer is meeting with this agent. Let me call up that agent and ask them when they're going to go meet that consumer face-to-face, and talk to that agent about, it looks like this person's buying in the next 3 to 6 months. How do I make sure that I'm involved in this deal and they know about me during this period of time? So I think having some inside ISA or kind of lower cost resource to help filter through and set up meetings has been a big win for a number of our title partners.
That makes sense. And are you seeing a better use or adoption of this across large title companies or small title companies, or how do you think about who this fits well for?
I think this fits well for the new innovative title company, right, who isn't necessarily always doing things the way they were before. There's a wide spectrum of some people who seem to be really kind of happy and complacent in the processes that they have, and not looking to innovate as much. And then there's some organizations, some very small, looking to get bigger, some big and looking to expand even more, who are interested in flexing and changing and saying, maybe I should talk to the consumer sooner. Maybe I should interact with an agent in a different way. So I think it's more kind of complacent versus non-complacent, or innovative versus non-innovative, not necessarily big versus small.
That makes sense. So moving on, I think there are two main categories of expenses for most title companies. You have your sales and marketing, customer acquisition efforts, and then you actually have your processing, where you're delivering the product to your realtor, to the consumer, to the lender. That's the area where we see a lot of opportunity in terms of automating the transaction. So our customers at the moment are doing twice as many transactions per processor, as they were prior to switching. So we really think that there are tons of different tools you can roll out that bring automation to the transaction and allow you to provide a better experience to your realtor, to your lender, to the consumer with much less work. So I think the combination of sales and marketing efficiency with processing efficiency is allowing a lot of our mutual customers to really stand out. I think.
I'd add one quick thing to that, Nate. I find our kind of more technically sophisticated title organizations that ingest the leads in real time and then do email and text marketing campaigns to agents and consumers, again, are spending less time and effort on this, but creating a lot of value through automation.
Right, I completely agree. I think the other thing that happens is that you can actually minimize a lot of risks by using new technology, where you know what's going on, and you limit your escrow risk, you limit your title risk, and all of that. So for the rest of this presentation, this was a bit of a background on where we see the opportunities for title companies to grow. But I actually wanted to take the rest of the time here to just talk with Ben about, hey, where is the market going generally? What is real estate doing? What is the mortgage market doing? And how are things changing? I think Opcity and Qualia are two examples of venture investment into title, but there are others. And I think there's a lot of change happening on the brokerage side. And so I guess the first thing I wanted to hear, Ben, your thoughts on is, how do you see these iBuyers, companies like Opendoor or Zillow Instant Offers, how do you see them impacting this market? Obviously, you're selling to real estate agents.
Yeah, I think the iBuyer world is a really interesting solution for a percentage of the population. I just don't know how big the market opportunity is there. You talk to these iBuyers, they're only in specific markets, right? And those are expanding. But then they only work with certain price homes, right? Maybe it's over 200,000 and under 500,000, right? Then within that, they only work with certain age homes, right? So maybe your home can't be over 30 years, right? And so it starts to narrow and narrow the total addressable market. Then, at least today, you are paying a premium as a consumer to participate in one of these programs, right? You're going to pay more than you typically would in fees. And so because of this, the market is really somebody who is looking to sell their most important or most expensive asset as soon as possible. And again, that isn't the majority of people who are selling their homes right now. So I do think it's a great solution for a subset, but I think the majority of homes won't be sold this way. But it does say something that's really interesting to me, in that these new venture-backed companies are really thinking about the consumer. And I think that's one thing that's been really lost in our industry is companies saying, I'm going to invest my resources into helping the party who has either the asset, which is the seller, or the money, which is the buyer. And they ultimately control the entire situation, right? And so if a seller says, I want to use an iBuyer, they will, right? And if a seller says, I want to use this title company, or they say, I want to use this agent, they're the ultimate decider there. And so I think a lot of VCs have realized that and are backing organizations that are doing right by the consumer to help them through this complex journey. and make it simpler for them. And that's what I love about Qualia. It makes the closing process so super simple for the consumer. And OpCity, again, we're that concierge. The average home buyer or seller is dealing with 10 to 40 different vendors through this process, and it's really stressful and scary. And it's the largest purchase that most people make or in their entire lives. They're in essence taking a 30-year bet on themselves to be able to pay for this thing and are scared. And our take is we want to connect and help this consumer connect with the right parties and make it a super streamlined and simple process. And together with Realtor.com, we have access to a phenomenal number of consumers.
How do you think that the role of the title company as it relates to instant offers develops over the next few years here? I know, as an example, Opendoor has their own title company.
Yeah, look, everybody wants to have a closed ecosystem, I think, right? And so Opendoor will say, well, if I'm spending all this money to generate consumers, I want to have my own lender and my own title company. And I think you see that in a number of these different parties. And I think what makes OpCity unique is, we don't own any of the brokerages we work with, and we don't want to. We don't own any of the title companies we work with, we don't want to. Much like Uber doesn't own any of the cars that they have on the streets, or Airbnb doesn't own any of the properties, right? Like, we are a platform to make this whole process much smoother. But we do want strong title companies within our ecosystem who can be those preferred partners who have proven to give great quality to consumers. So we don't want to work with just any title company. We want to work with those that are going to have make the best experience for the consumer.
So one question I have, I was on a webinar actually last week with Pat Stone, who I think a lot of you probably know. He's the founder of WFG, and I asked Pat a similar question, which is, do you think that companies will, like Opendoor, will control selection of title company on transactions? And his response, which I thought was interesting, was that very low percentage of people actually find their realtor through Zillow or Realtor.com. Do you, maybe 10%. Do you think that number will increase over time, or how do you think about the willingness of a consumer to start that transaction online versus to go with someone in their local market?
So I think that's changing very, very quickly, right? If you see the staggering numbers of consumers who are submitting online leads, they're not submitting these online leads and typing in their name and phone number into a form just for fun, right? Of all the consumers we speak to, and we speak to hundreds of thousands every month, we ask every single one the same question: do you have an agent? And 90% of them say, no, I do not. I do not have an agent that I'm currently working with. Now, my guess is 100% of those people say some agent claims that they're in their sphere of influence. So I think there's this real disconnect where agents think they have a database and a network of consumers, but those consumers don't know who that agent is, or that agent isn't top of mind, right? That agent hasn't done a good job of staying in touch with them the last 7 years since while they've been in their home. And so, the brand of Realtor, Zillow, and others is much stronger than the brand of any real estate agent or any brokerage, right? And so because of this, when somebody thinks, I want to go buy a new home, they're going to Realtor and Zillow, and they're looking at properties, and they're having a great search and discovery experience. And then they say, I want to go see that property, and they type in their information. Now, historically, that's where the experience started to break down, right? Because either a random agent would call them, no agent would call them, they get frustrated and then go find a local agent in the market. But OpCity, now that we are calling them within 4 seconds and not connecting them to a random agent, but someone who's been curated based on their needs and who they are, that experience is changing, because this 90% of people who are submitting leads saying they don't have an agent are now getting to a really good, strong agent for them. And so now that process is being solved for that subset of people, we're trying to solve it for lender and title and everything else. So these people who don't have these services go with the best of the best in a very simple to use holistic system.
That's very cool. One, I think maybe side effect of this type of thing, or just another trend that's happening in parallel, is that a lot of the brokerage side margins are compressing. I mean, you see Realogy as an example has struggled this year. I think their stock's down 50%. The brokerage business is is not as strong as it used to be. And a lot of these people, Realogy has been this way for a while, but Realogy is vertically integrating. And so you have a lot of brokerages that own lenders or that own, title companies as well. And it feels to me like that trend is increasing as brokerages feel maybe a bit more pressure. How do you see that playing out?
Yeah, so I think there's two questions there, right? It's why are broker margins compressing and how do they combat that? And then the second piece is what are brokers doing and what do we think of kind of the lender title broker, unity closed ecosystem there. So the first thing on kind of the lower margin, brokers margins are compressing because they're adding less value to agents, right? Because agents feel they can go somewhere else and get something, just as good for a lower price. The way that the broker remargins their business is by owning the consumer. Because if they own the consumer and the consumer relationship and pass it off to the agent will see a lot more value from them than, say, somebody down the street. And so that's, I think, where Opcity help brokers a lot is we don't sign on individual agents. So you're an agent, you want referrals from Opcity, you can't get them. We partner with the brokerage to figure out what agents are the best fit for this and will do the best, and then the broker invites those agents. Because of that, the broker is able to control the margin on Opcity referrals, and this could help. It brings more company dollars to that brokerage and thus higher margin than traditionally what they're doing. Now, because their margins are lower, they're trying to add these other services. They can't mandate or dictate them from RESPA, so you are going to have a percentage of people that no matter what don't use your service. But also they can't mandate, their agents have no motivation, right? Why would I use my broker's title company or lender, right? What's in it for me? These are all independent contractors that seem to do whatever they want. And so what we've done to help that broker is if you are a title company that's associated with a brokerage or you are a lender that's associated with a brokerage, we can help create this team and the team that you want. And so the agent sees, wow, I'm getting referrals from Opcity, and it happens to be my lender, my broker's lender. It happens to be my broker's title company. And so the Opcity system allows brokers who own title and lending organizations to help get a higher capture rate on all of those. So our customer is the broker, the lender, the title company, and so we're doing everything that we possibly can to help all of those parties, increase their margins.
That's interesting. Are you comfortable talking about what sort of rate at which the title companies end up, or the title company you introduce ends up working with the agent?
Yeah. So, let me step back even further from that. Right. Of all the leads that we purchase, only a third of them do we ever refer out to an agent. And the reason for that is the other 2/3 might not be a good fit right now, might not be buying in enough period of time, we don't want to waste agents' time with them. Now, if all of those referrals, we add title to all of them, right? So out of the gate, if you were a title organization, you were to say, do some co-marketing with a broker and agent or spend money on leads, 2/3 of them instantly would be garbage, right? So this allows title companies to only pay for, be a part of the 1/3 that are good. But still, every one of those referrals don't ultimately make it to a close. Once something is referred out, the close rate on that could be, depending on the lead source and a few other factors, anywhere from, say, 6 to 12, 15%. So that still means that the majority of those leads are not closing, right? But they were involved with an agent early on in the process and were able to build that rapport with a strong agent who was excited about this lead and thus could get future business from them.
That makes sense.
So I don't know if that completely answered your question. There's wide varieties in title organizations of their own individual close rate on our leads, but I just wanted to give you high level, just like what closes in general.
That's very helpful. We had a question about refis from the audience, and I guess one stat I would mention first is that First American, I believe, if you look at their annual numbers, they make about 10% of their revenue on refis. So right now it's a pretty small percentage of the market. My understanding, Ben, is that you focus entirely on purchase. Is that correct?
Yeah, and at this point, we are helping consumers who are in the search and discovery process buy or sell their homes. No, the future will be maintaining relationships with those consumers as they've been in those homes and look to refi. Now is not the ideal time, I guess, for us to be buying or building a refi product.
Right.
So we're really focused on kind of new home purchase right now, but that doesn't mean we wouldn't in the future.
That's very interesting. I think there's some involvement if you look at Mellow Home, or if you look at Quicken's in-house realty group. I think there's some parallels to what you're doing, on the brokerage side. Do you think that the lender-driven efforts in this area are going to be successful, or how do you think that compares to what you're doing?
So I think it's an interesting model. I think Quicken spend a tremendous amount on marketing, and then they've passed those out through what's now called Rocket Homes, right? It was in-house realty. Loan Depot is a big player in that space as well. But we do see the majority of traffic not coming from people who are looking to get, pre-approved first, but people who are interested in properties, right? People love looking at properties. It's, house porn. People, whether they're buying or not, they're looking at them, and then they're used to going to these sites when they think real estate. That's why we love partner up with Realtor.com, right? When you want a realtor, people go to Realtor.com. When you want to look at properties, people go to Realtor.com. So they get a lot more traffic to those portals than the Quickens, than the Loan Depots. Now, both of those guys are building portals, but it's going to take some time to get some traction. And on the flip side, the realtors and the Zillows of the world are much further ahead on the lending side of things than the Loan Depots and Quickens are on the home buying side of things.
Right.
So a lot of people will go to these portals and also submit inquiries to find a loan. So ultimately, it's where do you get the consumer eyeballs to come participate on your portal? But I think in essence, everyone's going to be doing everything, and ultimately, consumers do want a one-stop shop. And whoever has the best one-stop shop will win.
One thing that's different about the home purchase than maybe buying a pair of shoes on Amazon is if you're going to Amazon to buy something small, usually you're comfortable saying, okay, I know that this is going to be a good price. I'm not going to go through all the work to shop on 50 competitive sites and then figure it out. I trust that Amazon is going to give me a good price. Do you think that that's ever possible to do on the home buying side? I think if you look at the efforts that Quicken and Loan Depot are doing to compete with Zillow and Realtor, my view on why they could potentially be successful is that consumers are ultimately going to look at the all the different options they have for buying a house because it is such a significant transaction. Is that right, or do you disagree with that?
Well, I think what's different is people go to Amazon because you can get something that's cheaper there that might not be cheaper on a different website. But the reality is Zillow, Realtor, whatever Rocket Homes is going to be, and Mellow Home, they all have the same inventory, right? They all have the same listings from the MLS. You're not going to see one house priced one way on Zillow and another price on Realtor. Now, the Zestimate could be different, but that's not the actual listing price, right, what somebody's showing. And so you're not going to go to Realtor and say, oh, I go here because I find better prices than on Zillow, right? You're going to go to Realtor because you say, I have a better experience on this. I'm able to see more properties. I'm able to see better properties. I can filter better. I can have a better experience meeting the right agent, connecting the right agent, and finding the right title company and the right lender. So
that makes sense.
So I think a huge, difference in the future is going to be, if you think about what real estate agents used to do, right? It used to be find me a home, right? Find me inventory, show me those homes, right? Drive me around and let me see them, and then help me close on the deal and negotiate to get the best price. Find me a home used to be because consumers didn't have access to any data, right? That MLS data wasn't public. And so going with one agent versus another, you actually may get more inventory. Might get more prices, better prices, right? And so there was a big differentiator back then, much like there is Amazon. Today that's gone away, right? And I think that part of the agent's job of find me a home has also gone away because I have access to all of the same inventory that an agent does on my phone. So why would I go bother talking to an agent when I can do it myself? So then that part of the job, I think, for an agent has gone away. The second part of a job for an agent is show me homes. I think with 3D tours, I think with self-driving cars, I think with fingerprint lock boxes, I think people are going to be able to go tour their own homes themselves. Now, some people will want someone to drive them around, but it's not going to be as necessary and probably a central part of an agent's job. And they also could probably have some other lower level resource open doors for people. But the real part of an agent's job that's not going away, and I go back to your Amazon question, is getting you the best price, right? The way you get a best price on shoes and socks is you look on Amazon or look on many places on the internet, and it's a commodity, and you find out where I can get the cheapest price. But with a home, the way you get the cheapest price is you got a good negotiator, right? You got a good agent who knows what they're talking about in your corner, and is able to really be your advocate there. And so we believe that those 2/3 of the agent's job, find me a home and show me a home, will potentially go away. But the negotiator part of the job, that won't. And that's where Opcity comes in to connect the right consumer to the right agent, to really help in that process. I was thinking the other day, I could represent myself in court. I don't, right? I hire a lawyer and spend a lot of money, in the right lawyer if that was the case, right? Because I want them to negotiate because this is a big deal in my life. Same thing with an agent, right? I could go represent myself and negotiate on my behalf, but I would go to an expert agent because they can help me. I bought a condo a few years ago, and actually the developer wanted one price and I wanted another, right? We're at a standstill. My agent came in and said, I already put 4 people in this building. You don't take this price, I'm never bringing anyone back here. Guess what? I got my price, right?
There we go.
My agent had that leverage, right? And 99.9% of agents couldn't have done that, but I had the right expert who was able to, really bring the price down for me.
One other question, we've gotten from the audience is, how do the title companies pay for this? How do they? Let's say they want leads. How do they pay for it? And then a related question is, if they're paying for these leads, is there any chance that they alienate existing realtor relationships that they have, or that was another question we got.
Well, the way they pay for these leads, they set an upfront marketing budget with us, and then we decide with the title organization what markets they want to be in, what brokerages they want to partner with, and really cater something to their needs, right? And they pay. We set that budget based on how many introductions they would like to both consumers and to agents. Would this alienate them from other agents? I don't think so, because this is all additive, right? That's like saying if I went down the street and met a new brokerage and met a bunch of agents there, would my first set of agents be upset? I think they'd understand that I'm expanding my network, expanding my business, and as long as you as a title organization, your service doesn't dip because you have more customers, then you should keep going. Now, if you think by adding more customers, I'm not going to be able to deliver as good a service to my current customers, then I would worry about building out capacity first. But I can't see an agent being upset at a marketing campaign that another agent's doing that a title company's doing to acquire another agent. Nate, can I ask you some questions?
For sure.
So look, I think Quali is a phenomenal product, and it's really cool to see kind of a lot of the adoption that's happened very, very quickly. What do you attest, because you guys, we've only been around a few years as well. What do you attest a lot of your growth to? And what's kind of been your biggest learning these last few years?
I think it's a few things. One, there's been surprising appetite among title companies that we've spent time with, for new things. I'm sure that you've found this as well, Ben. But title companies haven't had new technology in a long time. I think that I would say Simplifile is probably one of the only material big platform changes that have happened in the last 15, 20 years in title. And so I think that when we came and introduced a new product, there was the appetite there for really moving the transaction forward, really increasing efficiency, and I would say that's why we've been able to distribute the product.
How much in title do you think in the future, I 100% see all of the value that's being created will happen virtually or maybe even over the phone versus in person in a title office?
I think so long as the local realtor is negotiating pricing, to your point, I think so long as the local realtor is negotiating pricing, the title transaction will continue to happen, in person. I think that some of that, it could move online, but the reality is that this is such a significant transaction for people. It's such a big moment that I don't think consumers actually do want to sign on entirely digitally. So I think you are going to see tools like what we've rolled out, which is allowing you to sign all your docs ahead of the closing. But I think that the consumer still wants, the buyer and seller are still going to want to come together, swap keys, sign the deal, and kind of celebrate the transaction. I think.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to say, I love that point because I think people are so worried that it's binary, right? Everything's done in person versus nothing's done in person, right? Everything's in the cloud, nothing's in the cloud. And the reality is it's not that black and white, right? So yes, now the search and discovery process for homes is happening online, but the viewing of those homes is happening in person, and the negotiation of those homes is happening in person. It's this combo, right? Same thing with title, right? Yes, some of the things that before were done in person and by paper are now going to be done digitally or are online, but a lot of the part pieces won't be. And so that's always my answer is it's not as black and white. I think this hybrid model is what the future will hold.
A good example there is we have a product that will automatically schedule closings. Previously that was just a waste of time. That was redundant work that didn't need to happen. It's not value add to the realtor, to the consumer to schedule in a particular way. You just need to get it scheduled and call it a day. And the types of tools we're releasing are tools that enable your processors to do their jobs more efficiently, to do it better, and cut out a lot of the redundant stuff that's not value add.
Yeah, no, I completely, and that makes a ton of sense. I mean, one question I had for you as well is because so much of our business is about enhancing the consumer and agent experience, right, and really having that be an awesome flow, and just something that they remember and want to come back to. What do you think? How can title companies better communicate and coordinate with realtors and their clients, and just make sure that they're delivering a phenomenal experience that people want to come back to?
Well, I think first off, it's essential that the title companies offer some web-based mobile app to their consumers, to the realtors, to the lenders that lets them track everything that's going on in the transaction, that pushes information to them automatically, that lets them communicate securely, and do all of these things. I think that's just table stakes. Beyond that, it's providing an extremely high level of service. So it's a lot of the things that title companies always talk about. It's being responsive. It's solving problems. It's making sure to communicate well around any issues that do come up.
One question I also had as someone who recently bought a home, I felt like some of the process, like people were, I had to email things over. I was like calling and on my phone and texting and stuff like that. Like, what do you see the future of security in this, and how do you think this could be more secure?
Well, I think security in this transaction is an enormous problem right now. If you look at what the FBI said, I think it was about $1 billion of fraud in these transactions last year. Lost wires, consumers losing their deposits, payoffs being forged, and sending money to the wrong place. Both title companies and consumers losing a ton of money. I think that, frankly, that problem is going to get a lot worse over the next few years. It's just too easy for people to attack the transaction. That said, in order to combat it, I think you need to bring every transaction participant into one secure place to transact. I think that goes a long way. I think at the end of the day, though, when it comes to wiring instructions, they got to be confirmed over the phone.
Yeah, I thought about my process of buying a home, and there was a number of scary incidents And I would say the scariest thing for me was wiring that money. Because
Right.
I was like, this better be going to the right place. And, we talk about this end-to-end solution and making the consumer's journey better, connecting them with all the right parties. But it's really about bringing that stress level down for the consumer. And I think if you guys can crack the code on how to bring that I'm sending money stress down, it would go a long way.
So Ben, I think we're probably good here. I appreciate you coming on and taking the time to talk through all this stuff. Jeremy, thank you for having us.
Yeah, no problem, Nate. Ben, Nate, thanks for taking a little time right before the holidays to offer some insight on how to deliver basically an exceptional experience at the closing and for the customers. We did. Hopefully, we addressed we did get some questions. Hopefully, the speakers answered your questions. Reminder: if you missed parts of today's webinar, if you think others in your office would benefit from listening, the recording of the presentation will be available and emailed directly to you in the next day. All of our archived webinars are available on Alta's website at alta.org/title topics. Looking ahead, next month we will have First American's chief economist who will provide a forecast of the 2019 housing and mortgage market to help you hopefully understand the types of customers you'll be helping over the next year. And with that will bring us to the conclusion of today's presentation. To wrap up, I do need to thank Fidelity once again for sponsoring our Title Topics webinars. And I also want to make a mention about the ALTA registry. Both Ben and Nate talked a little bit about wire fraud, and lenders are using the ALTA registry to fight wire fraud because they want to make sure they have reliable information about the title and settlement companies that they're using to fight back against scammers and hackers. So, lenders lenders know that the ALTA's data is accurate and that title companies are accurately identified. So I encourage you to go to Alta's website, make sure your information is confirmed in the ALTA registry. Again, Nate and Ben, thanks again for sharing your expertise on this topic. And with that, take care, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for having us on.
Thank you. Hey, take care.
Bye, everybody.